Leadership is perhaps the most important thing, important trait perhaps you can develop. So during my entire career, I've been exposed to all kinds of leaders. So I've worked in various organizations, started off at Ferguson's, then joined KPMG. I've worked for a little stint at Grant Thornton, and then ATD, and then now Acumen. So they all have different styles. So not to say perhaps one style is perhaps the best style, but style is perhaps governed by the circumstances and the business environment you operate in. So in investment banking, we normally used to have kind of an aggressive leadership style because obviously the kind of pace you work at in investment banking, so it's traditionally relatively faster compared to other spaces you work in, as opposed to Acumen. Acumen is relatively slow business environment. It obviously expects you to give you that kind of time to absorb information and then react. So that kind of leadership is different. So who is actually a leader? If I were to put you a question. So in my opinion, I think leader is perhaps someone who can lead by example. So you can be a leader in your own department. You can be a leader in your own organization.
Yeah. It's not really related to leaderships. I'll just put that.
Perfect.
I'll park that for later.
So you can just keep sending your questions. We can take it one by one when we open the session for Q&A later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So leadership style is essentially. Let me just read this definition. Leadership style is this leader's style of providing direction, implementing plans, and motivating people. So as I've said, that it is pretty much a function of business environment. So I've been exposed to all kinds of leaders throughout my limited career. So the responsibility of leadership is perhaps to give you that kind of clarity and to empower you to do your function at the most optimal way possible. So for me, this is what leadership is. So we've got two kind of people. Either you can be a leader or a manager. So the leader are someone who obviously people have people who follow them. So obviously for everybody cannot be a leader. This is a trait you need to develop over time, and this is perhaps the most difficult of traits to nurture. And managers have people who work for them. So successful business owners needs to be both a strong leader and a manager to get their team on board, to follow them towards their vision of success. So it is of paramount importance whenever you're doing something out of sorts. A leader is someone who actually guides you, inspires you, and subsequently empowers you. A good example would be Steve Jobs. We haven't really thought of something of technology of like touchscreen, some of the fantastic features which were later introduced in the iPhone and the tablet and even in the Mac. So it was just a thought process and a dream of one man who took it to another level. So, and also his ability to perhaps convince other people to work for him and to make his dream come true. So that was really important. So examples of management. Management is obviously a function which I believe is pretty much a function which you will for sure be exposed to when you kind of reach a mid-level position in your career. You will have somebody working for you, so a lot of accountability for people working for you. You obviously supervise them. So just to give you an example, it's just a matter of controlling people or a set of entities. So example would be getting an audit done, preparation review of management accounts, so planning an event. So these are some of the examples. as I've highlighted earlier, for leader, the most paramount attribute of a leader is his ability to inspire people and to perhaps make them believe in a dream which he thinks is perhaps something everybody should perhaps share and should aim for. So his is just to perhaps read out what's written here: inspire people to complete their assigned tasks, so enable others and take responsibility on behalf of the team. So the most important attribute of a leader is he takes ownership of whatever the team does. He takes total ownership of that work and total blame, irrespective if the work doesn't really gets done in the manner as it was conceived, but he absolutely takes that ownership. That's a true leader is. So and the next slide actually compares the leader versus manager. So it's something which I've already mentioned, that leader is someone who actually enables and empowers, vis-a-vis manager is somebody who actually supervises and supports. So a manager is perhaps a function which is relatively lower than leader, because obviously manager has to go through that phase and then become a leader subsequently. So motivating people to explore options is perhaps a good example. Explain the purpose of importance, inspire people, and enable and empower others and take responsibility of the outcomes. So this is something I've already talked about. In the case of a manager, he does a lot of execution. He do a lot of interfacing. He with the team provides direction to the team, provides guidance. So obviously provides the enabling environment that is crucial for any task to be done successfully. So I think this is pretty much something we've already covered. Managing versus leading. It's something something which you need to learn when you pace up and you just go through a career. So, but trust me, leading is perhaps the most, you can say, most revered position you can get at any point in time. So be it leading your department, be it leading your organization, be it leading a team on the field. So people just look up to you in terms of that whatever you do is perhaps the best. So this is something obviously you learn through practice. You learn through a lot of training, and not something perhaps which you can get very easily. So there are 6 emotional leadership styles. So this is actually borrowed from Daniel Goleman book, leadership book. So first being is visionary. This is critical, absolutely critical, because leader has to give you a thought process which is not in the books, which is not in any textbook, or perhaps not even conceived. So he gives you a picture which nobody has actually painted before. So a good example I've shared with you is Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs co-founded Apple, and then subsequently then he left Apple, and then he joined an animation company by the name of Pixar. So Pixar came up with some fantastic movies later on. So another leadership style is coaching. So he basically connects people personal goals with the organizational goals. Pretty much he does that alignment kind of function, wherein he aligns the people goals with the organizational goals. So this is also a very important sliver of leadership. So another style is affiliative. He connects people together, encourage inclusion, and resolve conflict. So as I've seen in my career, nothing has been achieved through conflict. So not to say that conflict is perhaps very disadvantageous. Conflict is really healthy. If it gets resolved and subsequently gets transformed into something productive for the organization. Uh, it's an affiliative kind of a leader. He actually takes along everyone in the team and resolves conflicts, and he connects people. So then there is another style of leadership which is called democratic. So democratic actually actively seeks input from their team, and they rely more on listening than directing. So not every leader is a democratic leader because it actually depends. So assuming if you're leading a dream in which perhaps very seldom people believe, so I think it is not perhaps very useful for you to be democratic because not everybody shares your dream. A good example is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a very unilateral thinker, so he was very dominant, never really included except the core team. He never used to sell his idea to the entire organization. So it was just the core team who used to actually listen to him, make that pivot happen, and then subsequently move on.
Khurram, I have actually 3 questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you can just start with the questions and then we can continue with your presentation.
Sure.
So the first question is, Mubashira wants to know, is there any model or methodology that you can refer to when you talk about having the right leadership style?
Okay, it's a good question, Mubashir, I have to say. But you know what? There is absolutely no such one answer to this. So I've told you, leadership is pretty much a function of you adapting to a business environment and then perhaps behaving in a manner which is optimal to perhaps get a outcome from that situation. Steve Jobs perhaps could be the best leader in terms of working for an organization whose function is more so on the creative side as opposed to manufacturing, which is more of a monotonous kind of function. In this case, there is absolutely no one model or methodology. Yes, for sure, you can definitely follow benchmarks. There are so many personalities who actually inspire you in the areas they've worked. So this is very critical for everyone who's listening to this feed that they should have their own leaders in that particular area so that they can get that kind of inspiration, which is very important at every juncture of your career.
Okay, great. This another question. This is by Abdul Rahman,
Yeah.
and he actually wants to know the characteristics of a charismatic leader, irrespective of his position or power in the organization. Any few elements that you can probably highlight, 2 or 3, that this is what makes any leader a charismatic leader.
You know what? One of the most what I've seen is charismatic leader. One sliver is perhaps you should be owning the work of your team. If at any point in time, if the team feels that this is a guy who always stands for us, stands for the interest of the team, so they will definitely see a leader in their team. So this is a sliver. I feel that perhaps taking that leap and then obviously stepping up and taking that kind of responsibility for the entire work, that is really important. And at every point of your career, you will be presented with opportunities where you can step up. At that point in time, if you that take that opportunity and grab that opportunity and seize that opportunity, that's your time to shine. So I hope I've answered your question.
I think I just have one thing to add to what you just said. What about ethical side of it? Because you're an ACCA member, and ethics is a very important component of. You can't get a membership without the ethics module. So for leaders, where does ethics fit in?
You know what? Ethics is perhaps the one of the topmost quality people look at in their leader. So because obviously for every step in life, they actually look up to their leader as to what their leader would have done uh, in that particular situation. So I think being ethical and even as a finance person and somebody who's actually gone through a rigorous training and have done separate modules on ethics, it is very critical for us, because obviously to be ethical, and so this is something which perhaps can make or break your entire career.
Okay, so I think that was pretty clear. So Zoha wants to know, she's saying that everybody is not a leader, but at the same time, everybody wants to survive and compete in an industry. So what factor, other than leadership and luck, will help a person in order to prove himself or herself in the organization? This is slightly off topic, but they just want to know that if a person does not have leadership skills, let's say, can they still survive?
Absolutely. Everybody, absolutely, you're spot on. Everybody is not a leader, but you know what? At every point in time, you can be a leader in every function you do. So it could be, you could be working in a group of 2 people, 3 people. So at that point in time, if you might not have the attributes of a leader, but obviously you can train yourself. So I myself, uh, the position I'm actually sitting at, this is something I've actually trained myself for. To answer your question, this is something, yes, in my case, leadership is something, it's God gifted, but obviously this is something which can be harnessed as well. There are some born leaders, but obviously we've seen most of the leaders have actually become leaders through hard work. I believe hard work is perhaps some sliver which you can back on if you are to become one leader going forward.
Okay, so next question is again by Mubashira, and this is something related to what you just answered. She's asking, is it important to be on top of the authority level in order to exercise or display your leadership skills?
I think some of the authority is actually bestowed in the position you are given in the organization. Uh, it is actually important that whatever responsibility an organization gives you through that position, you exercise that. But in most of the situation, a leader is we've seen, even I've seen that he might not have, or she might not have the position or the authority to perhaps exercise leadership position, but he's actually, or she has actually stepped up. So that's where the leadership comes into play.
Yeah. Another question. Actually, we are getting more questions now. So this is regarding the example you gave of Steve Jobs. So Sayyid Osama wants to know that what category will Steve Jobs fall under, because he was extremely rigid when it comes to getting the things done, yet he was someone who was taken as an inspiration and probably as a team leader, or maybe his team used to love him.
What's his name, Osama?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Osama, I was just actually going through a very interesting article which talked about 22 qualities of a leader. So if I just can quickly run down some of the attributes which I believe you will for sure will agree with me in terms of Steve Jobs possessing those qualities. So the first quality is focus. So he was absolutely focused in terms of whatever he wanted to achieve in life. He was really confident. So if you can just see his TED talks, see his speeches, he was really confident. So and he was a man of integrity. So this is something even in his speeches and even in his talks you can see, and he was really inspirational, really passionate, really innovative. So really authentic, open-minded, and positive. So you know what? You've got, in order to create something, in order to create something new, you've got to be really open-minded. You've got to be really innovative. So I believe these are some of the qualities which he possessed. So I hope that. So that's why I just consider him to be one of the greatest leaders of this era. Because although he might be rigid, but obviously we're not looking for a democratic leader all the time. This is perhaps not the definition of a leader.
So you would say he was a visionary leader?
Visionary leader, absolutely.
Okay, so this is by Muhammad Kashif. He's saying being a leader means thinking outside the box, something you just quoted. And what if the organization that you are working for is reluctant to any kind of change and new idea? So what kind of leadership skill would you prefer for that person to have if he's under such organization?
Yeah, it's one of the difficult situations. You know what? Inherently, some of the organizations are very ad hoc, so they discourage creativity, and ideally speaking, you should try your level best in terms of obviously giving your input and perhaps make things happen in a manner which you feel should happen. But if you feel that it's not perhaps taking you anywhere, I believe then you can make that hard choice of moving on. So I've also worked for various organizations and for these very reasons.
Okay, wonderful. So this is the last question for the time being, and we'll be moving back to the slides. So Jitendra wants to know, it's a pretty straightforward and simple question. Is it possible to become a manager and a leader at the same time?
Is it? Yeah, I believe yes. Because you know what, leadership is actually a subset of some attribute in manager. So 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 I think being a manager is a subset of an attribute in a leader. You can be a leader at the same time being a manager, because obviously leader, but you know what, it happens for perhaps for a very limited amount of time, because even in my career I've seen that leaders communicate do a very limited amount of interface with the team. So manager is somebody who's actually sit with the team, who interact with the team all the time. He do a lot of interfacing with the team. So yes, leadership and manager can go hand in hand, but obviously at some point in time you have to elevate yourself to become a leader.
I'd just like to, I'm sorry, we'll go back to the slides. There's two questions. One, what type of a leader are you? Are you a democratic leader? Would your peers, how would they rate Khurram?
You know what? It's kind of a I haven't really thought of myself as a leader to start off, but yes, people definitely look to me as somebody who they would want to benchmark themselves. So Allah has been very kind in that sense. So I see myself. I think probably I would rather place myself as a democratic leader, because I believe in building consensus within the team and then take it forward.
And for that, you would have to have good people skills.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we have got Falak here also. Just one question.
Yeah.
On a scale of leadership as a YLP, where do you see yourself after going through the presentation yourself and seeing what Khurram has just said?
Well, right now I would most probably rate myself at a 7. Right, I mean, I do believe in gauging myself honestly, but I definitely am aiming for 10. So,
Oh,
by
that's
the,
wonderful.
by the end of this program, inshallah, I should be approaching that number.
I think we can put you in the visionary category as well.
Yeah,
We should put all our YLPs in
Yeah.
that category. Back to the slide.
Yeah, I think we can move back to the slides. We're just last 2 slides left, and then we'll take questions again.
Sure. So the last two styles of leadership is directive and commanding. It depends on orders, threat of punishment, time control. So I relate back to my same example of Steve Jobs. He was more of a directive kind of a leader, more commanding, because he just felt that perhaps whatever kind of thought process he was privy of is not perhaps something the management is able to think. So he always used to think a little ahead of time. So I think in that sense, one can be a directive leader and a commanding leader. So pace setting is another leadership style. He expects excellence from the team, and often the leader will jump in or help herself to make sure that the goals are met. So he obviously the leader actually sets the pace as to how the work is done. So I remember vividly, even in our investment banking, in my investment banking career. So our C used to actually really set the pace high, and it was really difficult. So invariably, we used to spend late hours in the office, and there were no obviously weekends. So pace setting is obviously one of the attributes of a leader. So I think that we are pretty much done with I believe how many slides there are?
I think we're done with almost all the slides.
I think we'll move forward as well because we'll
Yeah.
be sending those
Yeah.
slides.
So can we just take the Q&A or?
Okay,
Jump
so I'll keep the
I
floor
think the
open
6
for the
questions,
Q&A.
if you could just go
The
through that.
portions? Yeah, if we can go through the portions, Khurram,
Okay.
they'll come right in the end. Yeah, this one.
So
This is, let me brief you, this is about a professional accountant in the future. The research, this was one of the largest researchers for accountants. And the key findings of this research was that there are 7 quotients or attributes that you need to have to, enhance your careers. So those 6 quotients are intelligence, emotional intelligence, IQ, emotional intelligence, vision, digital, and creative. And there is also ethical and technical. So, can you brief us on how, and using your experience, taking a view from that, how relevant it is for leadership as well?
I think all the attributes are really important for leadership. So let me just take one by one. So in the case of experience, experience is perhaps something obviously trains you for becoming a leader one day. So even in my case, I'm transitioning, becoming better day by day, hopefully. So experience is something obviously you learn the hard way. Leadership obviously expects a certain level of intelligence. You don't have to be super smart. So my level of IQ is perhaps a mediocre. So you can very well take my example. So a leader doesn't have to be really super smart. But one of the attributes, even in my case, I can perhaps very well benchmark myself on, is I'm a hard worker. So whatever I intend to achieve, I make sure I achieve that. So that's some kind of that's something obviously you need to obviously train yourself for. So creative leadership obviously requires creativity as well. So I again would want to take you guys to the same example. of Steve Jobs. He was creative. He was really genius of his time, and he's actually given us something which perhaps we could have only dreamed of. So I'm not quite sure as to how to comprehend digital here.
It's the technology, ERP.
Yeah, okay.
So because a lot of new technologies coming, fintech.
Absolutely. So I think technology is perhaps the future. So if you see, most of the businesses are now becoming tech-enabled. We are moving, transitioning from a brick and mortar models to touchscreen kind of an experience. So just to give you an example, I was just going through an article the other day. The Ras.pk, which is one of the online platforms who sells retail goods. So they managed to sell on one day, which is a Black Monday, Friday, whatever.
Black Friday.
Black Friday. Yeah. So their sale on that particular day was over ₹1 billion. So you can very well imagine how glued Pakistan is now. So in terms of connectivity. So and just to share another example with you as to where we stand in the digital space. Pakistan did almost 1% out of the total revenue Google generated globally. So Google top line is close to $40 billion. So out of that, they've managed to raise $400 million from Pakistan. So this is how we are, and so I think we obviously ourselves need to get ourselves accustomed to technology. Otherwise, we will be for sure be history. So Taimur, if you can just help me comprehend emotional intelligence.
Emotional is like empathy. You know,
Okay,
as a leader, you would have to have,
Yeah, so absolutely, I got what your point. So leadership, we've seen that if you want to take your association to a next level, so EQ perhaps is one attribute that perhaps bridges the gap, because the kind of relationship if you manage to build with your team members, so they will stick with you throughout the highs and lows of your business. So if the leadership possesses this attribute, this is perhaps a priceless attribute in a leadership perspective, from a leadership perspective. So vision is, I've already explained in my earlier slides that vision is perhaps something very critical, and every leader has his own vision. So if you want to become a leader, for sure you've got to have your own vision, and then obviously drive that vision through. So I think we are pretty much, so I open up the floor for any questions you have.
Okay, so I have received one question. This is by Mubashir again. It's kind of a tricky question, so probably you would want to have your diplomatic leadership style. So she's saying that we see our managers and team leaders depicting no quality of leadership. However, they were still appointed for those positions. How can we communicate to them that they need leadership skills in order to lead a team? What could be the most appropriate method to approaching them and communicating that the right people are not in the right position?
So Mubashir, actually thrown me at the deep end. So you know what? This is absolutely a natural process. So if you're assuming, just to give you a very direct example, assuming if you're working for somebody who you feel doesn't really possess that kind of leadership skills, so normally organizations also have a 360-degree appraisal systems in place, wherein you can bypass him and perhaps reach out to his superior, and at any point in time, if there is a formal mechanism in place, but I'm sure there are even informal mechanisms in place as well, wherein you have this opportunity of at least getting your viewpoint across. But you know what? What I've seen is people who have actually failed to develop the requisite credentials which is required for a position, they've actually got stuck or perhaps being asked to leave. So it's just a matter of time, and so I think time is perhaps the best answer, because it's just a matter of time if they've just failed to adapt themselves as per the business environment and as per the aspiration of their team. So I think probably they'll be asked to leave at some point in time, or perhaps their promotion will suffer.
Okay, so I just received one more question, which is, can you please explain, this is by Kashif, can you please explain the emotional intelligence again, and how is it an attribute of leadership? And can you be kind enough to give an example other than Steve Jobs? I think for the emotional intelligence question, I'll ask them more to please brief on that.
Yeah.
And maybe add another
emotional
example.
intelligence is empathy. So it's like caring about others. So if you're like a leader and you really you have to take care of health and safety, for instance, in a corporate environment, you need to have those things in check so that it's a nice working environment to work. So leader would be caring and would have an empathy. A lot of multinational these days, like Unilever, they have daycare centers where female employees can take their kids and leave them in work. So those are the kind of initiatives leaders would take to improve, and those fall into that empathy line. You were talking about other examples. There are so many examples. Kagazam is a pretty good example, and the best example I think about leadership from my side is Muhammad, peace be upon him. Who is a better leader than Muhammad, peace be upon him? So if you just go through the life that our Prophet had lived, there's so many lessons for each one of us. I mean, that's just fantastic. But if you're talking about my mortals, Qaid Azam also, I think that's someone who has really, really inspired me, because he challenged everything and he won in a right way. He never conceded. He never felt defeated. He inspired the entire nation. We are talking about corporations, but this guy inspired an entire nation. That's something unique, and that's something very impressive.
So I feel I can perhaps give you an example, a pertinent example in this case is, assuming if you're getting married and then your boss shows up on your wedding. So that kind of emotional intelligence, perhaps that kind of EQ and the kind of connective really builds that relationship and takes that relationship to a next level. So
true.
Yeah.
I missed that part, but
Okay, so Falik actually has a question.
Yes, so over the years and given your experience and given the number of people you've met, given the different cultures you've experienced, what would be the one overarching quality of leadership which you would say, okay, this is the one quality you simply cannot do without, and which you would recommend, okay, we would, you the leader should develop not just for this program, but also for our career and our lives?
So what I've seen is in my limited career, so leaders who have been really revered and are looked up to are very inclusive. Inclusive in the sense that they are very sensitive to the needs of their team. So I just felt that if a leader develops that kind of a relationship with the team, so that relationship holds for life. So I've seen very good leaders in my Allah has been really kind that He's given me good bosses. So so they've really been very sensitive to the need of our team at that point in time, and they've realized it, and they've actually provided for whatever we've asked for at that point in time. So being very sensitive and being inclusive, because if you see yourself as somebody who's detached from the team, I think probably you will not be seen as a good leader.
Right. So,
Being
if I would summarize and get the impression that I'm getting, someone who's like a father figure.
father figure, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely, who cares for everyone in the organization, okay, be a department, whatever your profile is.
So the ideal would be where you'd not be able to, just develop a professional relationship with your colleagues, but also
Personal relationship.
as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is where the EQ comes into play.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
No, I have not received any other questions. We have just 5 minutes left. So, Khurram, I'll just ask you if you can just conclude today's session, and then we can call it a day.
Fantastic. So you've just been
There's just one more question.
one more question, yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll conclude. We'll just take this last question. We'll conclude. Okay, so he's asking, Sayyid Osama wants to know, sir, does the geographical and cultural factors play a role as to what kind of leader is developed? Example, extremely autocratic, etc.
So Osama, I think probably you're absolutely spot on, because the kind of business environment you live in, it's pretty much runs throughout across wherever you work. So if you're working in a region where it is actually ruled by perhaps a royal family, example could be GCC, perhaps you wouldn't really see that kind of participative culture. However, if you manage to work in places like US, where obviously democracy is perhaps the epitome. So in that environment, consensus-driven culture is prevalent. So yes, of course, it's pretty much a function of geography, and culture definitely plays a lot of role as to what kind of leader you are, or perhaps you can become.
Okay, great. I think, Khurram, we can just conclude the session for today. Yeah, and then we'll close.
Thank you very much, and let me just say, Khurram has just rushed from his office, and he is giving time for all of you. Please make most of it, and if you have any questions, I'm sure Khurram would be answering those, even if you send us an email. So if you have any queries, do send an email to Mithil.
So on that note, I just want to obviously conclude this session. You've just been a fantastic audience. So I just hope I've managed to answer your very inquisitive questions. So if you have any further questions, you can always reach out to me through Midhat. Hope to see you guys again at any point in time. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Khurram. That was wonderful. We love to have you here. And if there are any questions, I'll bounce them back to you. Thank you, everyone. We'll be closing the session now. If you have any questions, even in future, you can just drop a note at gearup.pk@accglobal.com. Thank you for joining. Have a good day.